Now here's an example of estimation that doesn't work very well. In this case, we're going to round these numbers and add them all together, add the rounded values together to get an estimate. And it's going to end up way off, and you'll see why. So let's round each of these to the nearest hundred and then add them up. So 472 to the nearest hundred, that's 500. 251 to the nearest hundred is 300. 160 rounds to 200. 278 rounds to 300. 354 rounds to 400. 155 rounds to 200, and 770 rounds to 800. Now all of those have been rounded to the nearest hundred. Now let's add them up. Okay, and let's find some groups of numbers that add up conveniently. Well, right up here at the top I have a 500 and a 300, and that adds up to 800, and along with the 200 right below it, that gives me 1,000 right there. And this 800 and 200 down here gives me another 1,000. And then there's the 400 and 300, and that's all that's left, and that's 700. And those are pretty easy to add up in your head. 1,000 and 1,000 and 700 is 2,700. So that's my estimate for adding all those numbers rounded to the nearest hundred. And you might notice that there's a problem here. If you actually add the numbers up with a calculator or just add them up exactly by hand, you end up with 2,440. So 2,700 is pretty far off. We're not even near to being within 100 of the actual answer. In other words, the actual number rounded to the nearest hundred doesn't get us anything close to the answer that we got. And the reason is because all of these numbers rounded up. 472 rounded up to 500, 251 rounded up to 300, and so on. All of them rounded up, and some of them rounded up severely. Like 251 here, that's a pretty severe rounding to 300. There's an error of 49 in making that rounding, and an error of 40 in going from 160 to 200. And all of those errors end up adding up to make our final answer, our estimate, significantly different from the actual answer. So the way that this worked out with all of these numbers rounding up, that usually doesn't happen. But you need to be aware that it can happen, and because of that, this method of rapid estimation by rounding can produce inaccurate results.